Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Radha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanamsari Yamuna Tira Vanamsari Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Radha Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanamsari Jamuna Tira Vanamsari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Gaura Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Trivrajagacharya Stotra Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhai Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Charya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Janitai Gauda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Yanandana Shalakaya Takshurindalitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhuktale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Scha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Panchakalpa Tribhyascha Kripa Sindhu Daivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Makiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nastaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamritam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi
Chakara Bhagavan Rishi
Nishreyasaya Lokasya
Nishreyasaya Lokasya
Dhanyam Swasya Namaha.
Dhanyam Swasya Namaha.
This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Surabhyay Namaha
Om Surabhyay Namaha.
Om Surabhyay Namaha
Om Surabhyay Namaha.
Om Surabhyay Namaha
Om Surabhyay Namaha.
Mukam karoti vasalam pangum rangayate girim Yatkripatamaham bande Sri Virundanakaram Yatkripatamaham bande Sri Virundanakaram. Hare Krishna. Oh, starting today. Yes, we have a special request from the audience.
As a part of college, it fits.
This is part of Varnashrama College that is ongoing. So we have 3 selected verses for the next 3 days beginning today. And today's verse is from the 7th canto
Yes.
of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter
11,
11,
text 17.
text 17,
1 second.
text 17. Okay, we will oblige.
Very good. Thank you. 7, 11, 17.
7, 11, 17. This is entitled The Perfect Society for Social Classes. For social classes. This section, for those who may not know, this section actually very important for all devotees, in many ways, especially for householders. It is the in-depth analysis of Srila Narada Muni on the topic of Varnasrama Dharma as requested by Yudhishthira Maharaj. And this is the first of 5 chapters, chapter 11 up to chapter 15. So text 17. Jaghanyo notamam vritim anapadi bhojan narah rite Rajanyam Rajanyam Apatsu Sarvesham Api Sarvashah Jaganyo Notamam Vrittim Anapadi Bhajan Naraha Rite Rajanyam Apatsu Sarvesham Api Sarvashah Jaganyo Notamam Vrittim Anapadi Bhajan Naraha Rite Rajanyam Apatsu Sarvesham Api Sarvashah Jaghanyo Notamam Vrittim Anapadi Bhajan Naraha Rite Rajanyam Apatsu Sarvesham Api Sarvashah
Jaghanyonottamam vrittim Anapadi bhajen naraha Rite rajanyamapatsu Sarvesham api sarvasah Jaghanyonottamam vrittim Anapadi bhajen naraha Rite rajanyam apatsu Sarvesham api sarvasah
Jaghanyonottamam vrittim Anapadi bhajen naraha Rite rajanyam apatsu Sarvesham api sarvashah
Jaghanyonottamam vrittim Anapadi bhajen naraha Rite rajanyam apatsu Sarvesham api sarvasah.
One devotee can get some tissue. Jaganyaha low person. Na not. Uttamam high. Vrittim means of livelihood. Anapadi when there is no social upheaval. Bhajat may accept. Namaha a man. I'm sorry. That was Naraha a man. Rite accept. Rajanyam the profession of the Kshatriyas. Apatsu at times of emergency. Sarvesham of everyone in every status of life. Api certainly. Sarvasaha all professions or occupational duties.
or occupational duties.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Except in a time of emergency, lower persons should not accept the occupational duties of those who are higher. When there is such an emergency, of course, everyone but the Kshatriya may accept the means of livelihood of others. Kindly repeat after me. Except in a time of emergency.
Except in a time of emergency,
Lower persons should not accept
lower persons should not accept
the occupational duties
the occupational duties
of those who are higher.
of those who are higher.
When there is such an emergency,
When there is such an emergency,
of course, everyone but the Kshatriya
everyone but the Kshatriya
may accept the means of livelihood
may accept the means of livelihood
of others.
of others.
Purport. The occupational duty, purport. The occupational duty of a Brahmana should not be accepted by persons in lower social orders, especially Vaishyas and Shudras. For example, an occupational duty of the Brahmana is to teach Vedic knowledge. But unless there is an emergency, this professional duty should not be accepted by the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras. Even a Kshatriya cannot accept the duties of a Brahmana unless there is an emergency. And then even if he does so, he should not accept charity from anyone else. Sometimes Brahmanas protest against our Krishna consciousness movement for creating Brahmanas from Europeans, or in other words, from Mlechas and Nevanas. This movement, however, is here supported in Srimad Bhagavatam. At the present moment, society is in a chaotic condition, and everyone has given up the cultivation of spiritual life, which is especially meant for the Brahmanas. Because spiritual culture has been stopped all over the world, there is now an emergency, and therefore it is now time to train those who are considered lower and condemned, so that they may become Brahmanas and take up the work of spiritual progress. The spiritual progress of human society has been stopped, and this should be considered an emergency. Here is solid support from Narada Muni of the movement known as Krishna consciousness. Translation again. Except in a time of emergency, a lower person should not accept the occupational duties of those who are higher. When there is such an emergency, of course, everyone but the Kshatriyas may accept the means of livelihood of others. The perfect society for social classes. So we have heard and read on many occasions how this system of Varna and Asrama, as created by Krishna, is meant to be followed, and it can only be followed actually if there are qualified leaders, especially the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, to organize society and to help individuals understand what is their position, what is their nature. In the Vedic culture, when such qualified Brahmanas and such qualified kings were present, it was not so difficult for people to understand their nature. Society was very localized. People were living mostly in villages, and it was relatively easy from a young age actually for people to know what their role and position in society was. In many ways it was what we call hereditary, although we come to know from Shastra, from our acharyas, that it is not based on birth that one takes up a particular position or social responsibility. So this verse, of course, is dealing with exceptions. When society is not organized, not under the leadership of qualified Brahmanas and Kshatriyas as we have today, then it is possible for individuals to take on different kinds of responsibilities. And Prabhupada points out that this is exactly our situation in Kali Yuga at this particular stage. And therefore Srila Prabhupada actually uses this verse as supporting his going to the Western countries and bringing people from non-Vedic background, non-Vedic culture, to become initiated, to become Brahmanas, to become even sannyasis. There is this one exception which is being explained here, that Kshatriyas, under any circumstance, can they accept charity from others. Charity actually is only meant to be accepted by those who are Brahmanas. So in this section actually Narada Muni explains about the 6 activities of the Dvijas. 6 activities of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. They are the same activities, 3 of which are mandatory, 3 of which one should be performing every day. The first one being to study the Shastra. It is not only the Brahmanas who study, the Kshatriyas as well, and the Vaishyas are meant to, on a daily basis, read, hear. Not only hear, actually the word is used, study, to actually study the Shastra. It's very interesting how in the Kautilya Artha Shastra of Chanakya, there is a very detailed description. One devotee was sharing his memories about Srila Prabhupada, and for him, he especially admired Srila Prabhupada because he was very, he had a schedule. He would rise at a certain time, he would have a morning walk at a certain time, he would always come back in time, just in time for darshan in the temple. He would take breakfast at a certain time, he would take his massage at a certain time. It was all very, very regulated. And because Srila Prabhupada was very much, a follower, he was born in a Vaishnava family. And so when we look at the description of kings and what their activities are in this Kautilya Arthashastra, it is also in great detail explained, what time they also get up, what time they go to the court, what they do before going to the assembly. For example, they must take darshan of cows, and part of their daily schedule, 3 times a day, at different intervals, at different times, they study Shastra. Very interesting. And of course we know that we need to be reminded, our Brahmanas need to be reminded to read Shastra. But actually Kshatriyas, when Vedic culture is in place, it's part of the culture. They study the Shastra on a regular basis. So that is the foremost, actually, of the activities that is especially recommended for the twice born, the Dvijas. Second activity actually is to worship, is to not just general worship, but actually to personally worship. You're all from India, so you're familiar with all of this, that the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, they have their own, they worship generally Shalagram Shila or some other deity. They have a morning deity worship program. So that is the second mandatory. And the third mandatory activity for all three is to give in charity. Kings, of course, because they have land, they have cows, they're opulent, so they will give such charity to Brahmanas. Vaishyas, they produce, so they will give charity of food. They may also, as we see even in modern day society, they will construct ashram and provide facilities for sadhus. Prabhupada used to say how India is such a place that, previously, now things have changed, but previously without any money, one could just wander all over India and no problem for food. He would stay in the Varnasrama, and even in, I guess in Haridwar and those places, they still have these kind of facilities. So that is first mandatory activity, to study, second to worship, and the third to give charity. And then the other three activities, of course, is in addition to studying, if one is nicely studying, then he will teach. That's the primary activity actually of a Brahmana. He will teach, and then he will also involve others in deity worship, and he will accept charity. But here the point being made that Kshatriyas, even if they take up the role of a Brahmana in times of emergency, they can never accept, they should not accept charity. So now, of course, as we mentioned a little earlier, and as Prabhupada also clearly indicates, we are very much in a state of emergency. But unless we, I mean, we're not only outside of India are we far removed from Varnasrama, even within India, I mean, even amongst our own devotees, there is the whole situation is quite vague, and in many ways, of course, simply taking up the holy name, chanting, is for those, I would say, for those who are living in temples, that is sufficient. But as we explained in the last few days, a vast majority of people don't live in temples, and therefore what activity will they be taking up? So this particular instruction is I would say especially for those who have some little understanding of Varnasrama, and therefore there's a need to at least introduce the notion, to introduce a notion that there needs to be this natural system of Varna and Ashrama, because it's created by Krishna, but that until we have a more normal situation, which we don't have right now, there will be mixture, and it's not a major, I would say, issue, in the sense that many of our devotees, some of you possibly have also had this question, how to understand to which Varna we belong to. And of course, to answer that question in our present context is not so easy, because everything is so topsy-turvy. We are a mixture, more of a mixture, because of how society has, I was going to say evolve, but devolve. I mean, it's like evolution, devolution, right? Human devolution. How many have read this book, Human Devolution? How many know what human devolution means? What does human devolution, you read the book, huh? Oh. How many know about the book? You know about the book, okay. We have an audience that have not heard about human devolution. Can somebody define what is human evolution besides Krishna consciousness? What does it mean, evolution? You know, Darwin's theory of evolution. From where we are. Yes. And how has that happened?
They say some bacteria has grown
Uh-huh.
plankton.
We have come from plant.
Bacteria is formed for some virus, unicellular bacteria.
Bacteria, virus. Don't speak about virus. According to Darwin's theory, we come from monkeys. isn't it? Yeah. So the common understanding of when we speak about human evolution is that we come from lower level and we rise to a higher level. We come from lower species and maybe bacteria, virus, and we rise to higher species. That is the basis of Darwin's theory that is commonly accepted in modern day society. And somebody could check out some vehicle coming, our brahmacharis. Subal, not been cut.
For translation.
Oh, translation. Okay. You got up at the wrong time. That's okay. Yeah. So, one of our devotees, those who have been attending the afternoon class on the topic of Varnasrama discussions, we have read the discourse or the presentation of well-known devotee, Dhruta Karma Prabhu, who who has written two very important books. The first one, which is very thick, called the Forbidden Archaeology. Thank you. Archaeology was coming to mind. Forbidden Archaeology. I won't explain what that means, but the second book which he wrote, which I'll explain briefly, is in connection with human evolution. But the title of his book was Human Devolution. So, as we tried to explain a few seconds ago, human evolution means that we, from lower level, we come to higher level. Our understanding, Vedic understanding, is that actually that's not the way that is not the reality. Our understanding is that the first created living entity is Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma is such an exalted, most intelligent personality. And from Lord Brahma, different demigods are created, and then human beings are created. So it means that we are not working towards, especially in modern day society, the point he's making is that we are actually degrading. We are degrading, especially because of not being connected actually with these varnas. We are living in what our Shastra describe as Varna Sankara. What is meaning of Varna Sankara?
Crossbreed is
Interesting way of explaining. Where did you read that one? Crossbreeding. Yes, it means we are not following the pure line. We are mixing. We are mixing things, and therefore we have become mixed up. Yeah. Within a situation of Varna Sankara, we are engaged in mostly what kind of karma? Ugra karma. What is Prabhupada's definition of Ugra karma? Very nice description. Prabhupada translates Ugra karma as ferocious activities. Ferocious. For those who may not know what is ferocious, ferocious means what's another word for ferocious? Very hard, very destructive, very abominable, very bad. I guess, yeah. Ferocious activities, very much motivated by rajas, passion. Just like we hear about, if you go in the forest, not our forest, other forests, you might meet some ferocious animal. Dangerous. Ferocious also means very dangerous. An animal who will attack you and eat you up, ferocious. So in other words, when we don't have society following any kind of proper system, the ideal in terms of proper system, proper social system, is the system of Varna and Ashrama. So the further we go away from this, Varnasrama means actually organized society. Organized society, the center or the focus of which is to serve Krishna. Means God conscious principles are there. The focus of which is also land, the focus of which is also cows, like this. So the further we are away from this natural system, then we open the doors to this ugra karma. So this is our present challenge, actually, today, being the 19th of January 2021. That's correct, right? Yes. Just want to make sure everyone is. So we are in this 21st century. We are, in many ways, at the height. We are living and seeing and experiencing all of the negative effects. Varna Sankara means it produces all kinds of dangerous and very destructive effects, which bring all kinds of suffering actually within society. All you have to do is read a newspaper occasionally, but not every day. And for devotees, actually, it's not even necessary to read newspapers, because we understand, actually, we see from the Bhagavatam, those who don't follow Dharma, they end up in all kinds of very complicated, miserable kind of situations. So this is our challenge today. The Lord appears through different incarnations. Paritranaya sadunam vinashaya saduskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge, to re-establish the principles of Dharma. So part of these principles of Dharma are based on establishing Varna and Ashrama. And therefore, if we actually understand that this is very much part of Dharma, then we will make an effort to understand, to try and understand. And knowing that we are living in a condition of emergency, as Prabhupada explains here, then we will not be able to come out of that emergency unless we know at least the basics of what Dharma is, of what Varnashrama Dharma is. Now, of course, this is like an ongoing debate. Some people may say, don't even bother about that. Just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. But our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, if he really wanted us to do that, he would not have spoken so often about the importance and the need to establish Varnasrama, isn't it? Yeah. That without any doubt, Srila Prabhupada wants us to chant Hare Krishna, and wants us to understand that this is our meant to be our primary activity. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada has made very clear, has given us very clear statements that in order to help us, or in order to facilitate our practicing this Varnasrama Dharma, in order to facilitate our advancement in Krishna consciousness, the practice of Varna and Asrama is important. Yeah. So, actually, there are many verses in this section, and the three such verses were chosen, and I would like to give an opportunity to the individual who has chosen these verses to possibly indicate why he has chosen these particular verses, which no doubt are meant to help all of us deepen our understanding of what message is being given in these particular verses. So I would like to ask Srinath Prabhu, who has chosen this verse, to maybe make a short comment, and then possibly others might have some particular questions. Yes, you have the floor, literally.
So actually, one of the important points of this purport that Prabhupada nicely explains, that currently we are in an emergency situation.
Currently we are in an emergency situation. Who would agree with this? Raise your hand. Are we or are we not in an emergency situation? Siddha Balaram? Yeah. Okay.
Because of the technological advancement, people were losing their basics from where they have come, and then what they are doing, where it is heading towards.
People are learning the basics of what life is all about.
Yes.
Yes.
So, like for example, even in a society like India, people are actually heading towards the West in order to do the jobs over there, and then they have forgot the actual culture from where they have come.
People from India are going to the West and forgetting their culture of India.
Yes, and then because of that, even the Brahmanical culture is lost. And
Brahmanical culture is lost because of that. Yeah, it's lost to the West.
Yes.
Brain drain.
Yes.
You call.
So due to that, now there is a chaotic situation in the society.
Yes.
And Prabhupada actually wanted again to start with the establishing of head first.
Yes.
So during that time, because many devotees have doubt that will we be able to fill that gap of again being as a head.
So many devotees have doubts as to Prabhupada wanted to re-establish what is meant to be the ordained system, as mentioned in the Shastra, beginning with the head.
Yes.
But many devotees have doubts
That
whether we can fill this up,
fill that gap or not.
fill up the gap or not. Yes.
So Prabhupada is clearly mentioning here that it is actually there in the Shastras that in emergency we can take the role of a Brahmana.
So Prabhupada is making the point that even or especially when there is an emergency, as we now have, then it is possible to allow individuals who may not normally be Brahmanas to become Brahmanas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now this is actually the Prabhupada is mentioning here. because spiritual culture has been stopped all over the world, there is now an emergency, and therefore it is now time to train those who are considered lower and condemned, so that they may become Brahmanas and take up the work of spiritual progress. So this is one of the main reason why I chose this verse. And Prabhupada concludes there, here is solid support from Narada Muni of the movement known as Krishna consciousness.
Yes, those are the two last sentences
Yes,
of the purport. Yes. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada set out on a mission to bring people to the fold of Brahminical culture. Actually, I'm not sure if all the devotees here know that when Prabhupada before going to the West tried to start his movement in India, the League of Devotees, I'm sure many of you have heard, in where was it? Jhansi, yes. So Prabhupada had a whole, constitution written up. Prabhupada was very good at writing constitution. I mean, to write a constitution, you have to be very methodical, So he had all of his, goals and objectives and practices and daily schedule for those who wish to be part of the League of Devotees. And he had started, and he had actually students, especially he had many medical students. And one time Prabhupada had sent it's just like in a newspaper, you can request that some ad, you can write an article or write a small ad. You pay some money and they will print your ad. But Prabhupada's ad was refused. You know what Prabhupada's ad was? Prabhupada had written a small ad in the newspaper, and sent it actually to the editor of the newspaper. The editor of the newspaper told them, "Oh, we can't print this." And what was written in the ad was, "Wanted Brahmanas." This was considered like you can't discriminate. You can't. They considered that it was a kind of like discrimination. Even to this day, of course, people they have this misunderstanding. Same thing when in the context of education, for example, or Gurukula, So yes, this verse, as Prabhupada nicely concludes in the purport, it very much justifies so many things that Srila Prabhupada did, just like it is mentioned that sannyasis should not travel overseas. One should not go overseas. Prabhupada went overseas. He didn't fly. I mean, that first time. Afterwards he did. So in emergency cases, and we are still in an emergency case, so a number of things are, we could say, allowed during emergency situations, but then one has to one has to know and understand, okay, what we can allow, what we cannot allow. So Prabhupada allowed that people from so many different countries without any knowledge or information about the Vedic culture, that they could chant the holy name, become devotees, etc. like that. So that was the main reason you thought this text was important, to kind of underline how, especially in the beginning, actually, it took many, many years. Now we have an audience basically of, people from India. But when Prabhupada first returned from America, in those early days, 70, 71, 72, 73, there were very few. Actually, His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj, you can find that letter. He wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada asking that question. Why is it that young Indian people are not joining our movement? And Srila Prabhupada wrote back a letter. It's in the folio, you can read it. Prabhupada explained very nicely that due to the outside influence convincing so many of our young educated young men that Vedic culture was a backward culture, that Vedic education was backward education, and that the real education was Western science, Western education. So many people have actually been converted in that way, and therefore they are reluctant or hesitant to take up to our Vedic culture. So in those early days, even up to 1976, when I came to India, there were not so many young Indian people. That's why when somebody like Bhakti Charu Maharaj joined in Mayapur, it was like, wow, very rare. Especially, somebody who was like educated. So it was, it took a long time, but of course now there are so many, because of so much of preaching over the years. Now there's a larger number actually of, there are more people joining as devotees in India than practically, well, definitely more so than America. Russia also, they make a lot of devotees in Russian countries. I mean, they have, a lot of preaching activities. A lot of, one year, maybe 5 years back or something, they had something like 6,000 Russian devotees coming to Mayapur for Purnima. Some huge number like that. And last year, the year before, I think, many Chinese devotees also coming to Mayapur. Of course, upcoming Mayapur festival, I think not too many, because you cannot travel now with this whole crazy, COVID. But Prabhupada also, he mentioned that the last devotees to come to Krishna consciousness will be from China. China will be the last country where people will come, and he also mentioned that although they are the last, they will be the last one to come. They will make the best devotees. Prabhupada has such a vision, because in China, similar to India, they have very ancient tradition, not like America. America is just born yesterday, Still a baby, a crying baby. But China, they have a long history, and so they have, they know about culture, tradition, and some of their philosophies are of course, I don't know at what point, well, everything started to fall apart after the Battle of Kurukshetra, actually. That's how Kali Yuga was brought in, Krishna's arrangement. Because so many kings from all over the world, not just as most people think only just from India. There were kings from outside of what we know as India, and this we can understand by the flags. Each chariot had different flags, so one would have to do a little in-depth study to find out, okay, which like there was one flag which was representing Surya. In Japan, that is their flag.
Land of rising sun.
Huh?
Land of rising sun. Japan is called land of rising sun, so their flag is sun.
Sun. I couldn't get the point you're making.
Land of rising sun.
The land of rising sun. The sun rises everywhere.
The first sunrise is going to rise in Japan.
The first sun rises in,
First ray of
First ray of sun.
first rays of the sun.
in Japan.
It is far east.
Far, far east. Yes. So they actually worship the sun. Their flag is sun. So the point I'm making is that there were like these kings from so many different places, and we all know that everyone died during the 18 days of the Battle of Kurukshetra. So that means that so many very responsible kings from so many different countries were no longer there to actually rule their country, and that brought about, and there were other factors, of course, brought about the the advent of Kali Yuga. Yeah. So any additional? Yes.
Devotees are considering this Varnasrama activities as a material and not spiritual, so no need to do those activities. And then
Your point is that some devotees consider Varnasrama as material, and therefore we're meant to do spiritual things. Is it? What about?
all the activities related to any Varnashrama or anything, Gurukulas, these are not spiritual. Why to take? Only Bhagavatam reading and then chanting and then...
Yeah, well, if only people could read the Bhagavatam, they would understand differently. Varnasrama can be material if it's not connected with Krishna, but Varnasrama, as very clearly, let's say, explained by our acharyas, Varnasrama, when connected with Krishna, when all of the activities within the system of Varna and Asrama becomes divine, and therefore Daiva Varnasrama, then that is no longer material. Just like Prabhupada would say, a temple is a structure. Anybody can build a temple structure, or anyone can build a building, but those who build temples because the Lord is there and because the activities are devotional, that same material that other people use to make their house makes the temple different from their house. Somebody's house is made of the same material as a temple, but the activities and the consciousness in a temple are completely different than, let's say, ordinary house. So therefore, the system of Varna and Asrama is a material arrangement, but it is that ideal and perfect. Here we're reading about perfect society, perfect social division, perfect spiritual divisions. So it is that perfect arrangement which helps individuals and helps society advance or progress in spiritual life. So therefore it is incorrect to conclude that because you know, an apple is also material, isn't it? Is an apple material or spiritual? Depends what you do with it. If you offer it to Krishna, it becomes a spiritual apple. It becomes prasadam, isn't it? So, this social system of Varnasrama, when we dovetail that system as it is meant to be dovetailed in Krishna's service, then it is fully, completely spiritualized. And it is that system, that's important to understand, it is that system that Krishna is giving us to help us become spiritual. You know, Prabhupada made many such statements that the system of Varnasrama is there, given to us by Krishna, so that we can more easily become spiritualized. So those who argue with you that Varna is material, tell them, well, do you take material food every day or do you take spiritual food? Right? At the market, it's bhoga, it's material. Once it reaches your kitchen and you offer to Krishna, it's prasadam. The same matter becomes spiritualized. Yeah. So we will, yes?
So how to bring this system into the present society? Will people, present day people accept this system?
How to bring this system in present day society, which is highly misdirected, correct?
No, it's proper.
Modern society is not misdirected?
It is misdirected, but how to bring this Varnashrama into the present society?
Yes, how to bring Varnashrama in the present society? By distributing this Bhagavatam, where people can read about it. That is there are many ways. That is one way. People are not educated. People don't know that there is such a system. So it means through education, through training, and also, most important, by giving examples of people who are living that system. Means by establishing communities where the members of that community, he's very attentive, where the members of that community are following the system of Varnasrama. Make sense?
So everyone want to be Brahmin or Kshatriya or Vaishya. So
in the beginning, people may have this misunderstanding, but the goal of Varnasrama is not that everyone become Brahmana. The goal of Varnasrama is that everyone become a devotee, whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, isn't it? In other words, regardless of our nature, regardless of our social position in society, all of us can become pure devotees. A Brahmana can become a pure devotee. A Brahmana automatically is not a pure devotee. Most Brahmanas don't know about bhakti, don't know about that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, if one is receiving this knowledge beginning with Bhagavad Gita, then one can begin to understand that he is, as Krishna explains, Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. One is an eternal servant of Krishna, part and parcel, regardless of our material situation. So it means through education. Prabhupada wanted each of our centers, each of our city centers, each of our urban, rural centers, wherever we have devotees, those places are meant to be educational centers. And specifically, of course, in the context of Varnasrama, Prabhupada wanted that we establish Varnasrama colleges. By having these centers of education, gradually we can introduce this understanding and people will gradually take it up. Make sense? I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. So we will close here for now, and Varnasrama Prabhu is just now coming. Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Sri Prabhupada ki Gaur Premanande.
His Holiness Bhakti Raghav Swami Maharaj ki Jai.